Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Decision Hour. I am your host, Adam Bird, and I got a great episode lined up for you today. I got my friend Adam. Yeah, today's show is called the Adam and Adam Show. That's what we're named. We're calling this one the Adam and Adam Show. It's kind of like Two Detectives or something like that. Adam and Adam. You know what I'm saying? No. Listen, I met this guy and his wife. Oh, it was a couple years ago. We met through a mutual friend, and they're not far from me, and I just love these guys. They're great people, and Adam's willing to jump on today to talk about some stuff, some experiences that he's had, and something that he's putting together that I'm really excited about, and that you're going to hear me talk a lot about here very soon in the near future. So, Adam, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, what's up, man? How are you?
Doing great, man. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come talk with us. So let's dive into this. First things first, tell our listeners who you are, what you're about, where you're from, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Adam Zaffuto. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a veteran, I'm a Jiu Jitsu practitioner, and I have recently become a proponent of psychedelic medicines and how they can change our perspectives and how they can help us heal.
I love, first off, thank you for your service again. And I'm going to dive into this. Let's just go right for it. The psychedelic alternative medicines that we're starting to hear more and more about. Now, I first learned about psychedelic medicines when I worked for the task force when I was in the Arizona Guard, and we would, you had the DARE program. I'm dating myself here, but you had the DARE program as a kid, right? You a DARE kid as well? So you had the DARE program back in the day, and we would come in after the DARE officers and talk a little bit more about the cause and effects of drugs and alcohol on the central nervous system, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the drugs that you talked about were drugs like your standard, like marijuana, and then you have like your psychedelics, like LSD, MDMA, and the list goes on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All bad for you. Like we're just taught like it's all bad. Well, okay, let's look at the last, say, 10 years. We've seen the effects and the positive outcome of what CBD or hemp has done for people. Now, when people say marijuana, a lot of people are misconstrued. There's two strands of it. You have the THC, which is the tetrahydrocannabinol, and then you have the CBD, which is what they extract that turns it into like oils, and that's more the healing process, right? Now you get into like, it opens the door. Go ahead.
CBD is, THC is, has like neurological effects.
Right.
So it'll affect your nervous system, will affect your thought patterns and things like that. Whereas CBD has no psychoactive effect. Right.
Yeah,
and so it's
great. Like the CBD has been great for arthritis and stuff like that. I have arthritis. I use CBD products and whatnot. And they actually label marijuana as they say it's a depressant and it's a mild hallucinogenic, meaning that like 5 minutes can seem like 5 hours or vice versa. But then you have like some of the stronger stuff is what we used to like. Now you get into some of the good stuff, right? That's what we used to say, because you get on some of the stuff, and really what it was is like, LSD. I've heard horrible stories on that. MDMA, which is ecstasy, and abusing that. I've seen what that effect does. It cooks your body from the inside out. Yeah. But that's like, it's mostly common, like the rave drug. You see them at raves and stuff like that, glow sticks and loud music, stuff like that. Yeah. But here's the thing. You have stuff like MDMA, you have stuff like cocaine, even LSD. These are all things that have been used in the medical field for as long as, many, many years. You can look this up. Don't take my word for it. Look this stuff up. And I met a gentleman. This was, Adam, this must have been about 5-6 years ago now. I was at a conference, and he was a Army veteran, one of our brothers, and he was sharing his story on he was suicidal, stuck a gun in his mouth, pulled the trigger, and it misfired, and that woke him up. Like, let that resonate for a minute, folks.
Yeah.
He got onto some government thing that they were doing, testing MDMA and microdosing.
Yeah.
At the time, and he said when he got on it, he did it for several months. He hasn't had any flashbacks. He hasn't had any nightmares. He hasn't had any issues since. Mind you, this was 5 years ago. So you have some experience a little bit as well in that.
Yeah.
Can you share some of your experience with that and how it went for you, and what, like, can you walk us through what that's like?
Yeah. So I think there's two things we should look at initially. I think the first is let's look at MDMA first, right? It was developed by either Bayer or Merck Pharmaceuticals in 1910 as an aid to psychotherapy.
Right.
So it was specifically designed, and then that's how it was being used by licensed psychotherapists as a tool to help with psychotherapy. It was really, really well thought of in that community. And then in the 80s, it kind of made its way out of the therapeutic and healing usage of it and made it out into the party scene.
Oh,
and then,
hold on. Let me back up here for a second, because you said it created it in 1910.
Yes. Yeah.
And then in the 80s.
Yes.
So we're talking a 70-year stretch there where it was used.
Yep.
We could argue, say it was used properly.
Yes. Properly, I think, is the therapeutically.
Therapeutically.
Yeah.
And then in the 80s, excuse my language.
Yeah.
Shit hits the fan.
Shit hits the fan, it gets out of the cage, and it gets into the party scene.
Okay.
And you start having deaths, because MDMA does raise your body temperature a small amount. But when it's used in the therapeutic way, it's not even a light fever.
Right.
But when you combine that raise in body temperature with a mass of people dancing in an enclosed space, the temperatures are going to go up. And then it's also, they're not drinking water, and it is generally dehydration, heat stroke that causes this. That scares everybody.
Right.
And then the government goes and puts it as a Schedule I drug, adds it into the National Psychedelics Act, and all of this therapeutic use gets immediately slashed in half. Now that's where a guy named Rick Doblin comes into the story. Yep. Rick Doblin he's the scientist who put together all of the MDMA trials that are being really, really looked at now, because he's the guy who got the FDA to admit that this is a breakthrough therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and anxiety. And it was really great how he did that. Is he specifically used the trauma that we had seen in the war and the trauma of veterans, that we as a nation want to support our veterans. We want to heal our veterans. And you were having guys come back with treatment-resistant PTSD, and they were not seeing any benefits from anything else. And he said, why not just let me try? Let me do a statistical study on this. And he did the phase 1, and they saw these outlandish results. Yeah. It was like 90% of the participants had a statistical reduction in their post-traumatic stress symptoms, and something like 2/3 would then be classified after this as no longer having PTSD.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that SSRIs, anything else, cannot even come close to touching those kind of numbers. Same thing in phase 2, where they opened up the trial. Instead of just being post-traumatic stress disorder from veterans, they also included post-traumatic stress from sexual assault and rape survivors.
Right.
Saw the exact same results. Phase 3, they expand this even wider, and it's the exact same results. And that's what got the FDA to admit that it was a breakthrough therapy.
So I got to back up here a second. Yeah. And I'm not going to try to get too political on this, but it's like the fact that you had mentioned that it was started in 1910, pushed all the way. The 80s, it kind of broke out into the club scenes and the party scenes and whatnot. And then that's when the government said, oh, there's deaths. Now we have to crack down on this. And not to, again, not to be, like a conspiracy theorist or whatnot. A lot of those, probably the government had something to do with it breaking out into the scene. At the same time, you have to follow the money as well. The fact that we've been able to kind of harness this in and bring this in and use this as a treatment, and I want to make a point here, because when Adam's explaining this, when somebody is using this treatment, there's two big things that are key here. One, it's under supervision, I'm assuming, right? Very strict supervision, and then two, it's not like you're not popping a whole pill. It's or the potency that you're going to get at a club or at a party or anything.
You know
like that.
exactly what you're getting.
Yeah.
Whereas you take an ecstasy pill at a club,
yeah,
the chances of it being pure MDMA are very slim, and it will most likely be a combination of MDMA, cocaine.
Yeah, it's always laced with something. There's something laced with
getting cut with something.
Right, with something else. And so, are these? Do they consider this treatment then like microdosing of it? Is it a small course?
It is a when you would talk about microdosing for like psilocybin, like psilocybin mushrooms of microdosing, you would take 1/10 of a dose that would get you to 3.5 grams of mushrooms will send you on a journey. You are going on a journey, and you're going to have to wait 5 hours to come back to reality.
Yeah.
So a microdose is generally 0.3.
Okay.
So it's 0.3, so it's 1/10 of a dose. Now, I have become also a proponent of this microdosing, in that like you do a small protocol of day on, couple days off, day on, couple days off, couple days on, couple days off. And the effects are like, I describe it as being right at the edges of your periphery. Like it's not like I'm high. It's not like I smoked a joint. It's not like I drank a pot of coffee. It's just this right here at the edges of your perception, just a lightness to your being. You feel a little bit happier. You feel like you're a little bit better able to cope with the stresses of life. You're able to think more freely. And that is, I think, a direct effect of how the psilocybin affects the brain, is it helps the brain to create new neural pathways inside of.
Nice.
And promotes neurogenesis, which is something that we were told for decades, that, once you kill brain cells, you can't grow them back. Well, the science is now showing that psilocybin promotes neurogenesis. So it promotes healing in the brain. And so as somebody who's been hit by a hand grenade, had a hand grenade go off over me, like those are things to me like, any way that I can heal my brain, I will.
Yeah.
And so that's where, So I think we should get a little bit back to like how I got.
Yeah. So how did that start, or how did you hear about it, and then what was the, you're on a show called The Decision Hour. I'll ask this question again later, but what prompted that decision to give this a go?
I think I did combat tour in Iraq, where we were getting ambushed a lot, and then a combat tour in Afghanistan. And it was after my tour in Iraq, my mother said something to me, and she said, she looked at me and said, "Oh, your eyes have changed." And that to me was like this shot to my heart, like, oh my God, like my eyes. It was like the hardening of a human being from combat. You can see it in their eyes. And it's that photo, that artist from the Second World War who drew that beautiful painting, the 10,000 yard stare, right?
Oh yeah.
Soldier at Okinawa, and the tanks are firing at the ridge behind him, and you can see it in his eyes, the hardness. And that's what I had. There's a picture of me and my brother right when I got back from Afghanistan, and we were at a Pittsburgh Pirates baseball game, and my brother is like smiling and elated and so happy, and I'm sitting there with this like trying to put a smile on my face. But after having been in Afghanistan for 9 months, you have this hardening of your soul and this hardening of your humanity.
Right.
And it was I think the first thing is like realizing that there was something wrong. It was a big thing for me as I was coming home from Afghanistan on leave for Christmas or something. And I was walking through the airport in Pittsburgh, and there's a big central rotunda in the middle. And there was an advertisement for the Wounded Warrior Project, and it said, "Not all wounds are visible." And I'm walking through and I see that, and the first thing that went through my head is, shit, somebody knows. Somebody knows that I'm not all right. And I started crying, and I had to retreat to a quiet corner of the airport, compose myself and go like, "Hey, Sergeant, you better get your shit together and get on the train and go home," you know? And so that's a moment for me of being like, oh, there is something wrong. These 2 combat tours have done a number on me. So I did talk therapy for about 6 years and saw great effects from that. Jiu Jitsu is another thing that helped me get back into my physical health and to having those deep, close connections of like shared suffering with another human being.
Yeah.
Of like, you get those connections in a Jiu Jitsu gym of like guys that you have been practicing killing each other, literally, you know, and it's this shared struggle of doing something incredibly difficult together that builds like real companionship. And so that was to me a big thing of like building these companionships. I think when it became like, oh, I need to move on to what is the next thing of healing is the fall of Afghanistan. That was, and I think for a lot of veterans of the war in Afghanistan, seeing what now we are right here at
it's a 1 year anniversary.
1 year.
Yeah.
And I think it was a year ago yesterday, those Marines were killed. And 176 Afghans who were just trying to get to freedom were killed by an Al-Qaeda suicide bomber. And the fall of Afghanistan and how that happened and watching that whole thing collapse, it reminded me of this, you know, like, oh, it was so emotionally painful to watch that happen, to have my interpreters asking me, is there anything you can do? And my daughter was born, and on July 30th. And I remember holding my daughter in the hospital and getting a text message from one of my interpreters, a guy who is a wonderful, wonderful human being, lives in Dallas, Texas, Salam Rahmani. And he texted me, he said, "Brother, is there anything you can do to help me get my family out? Afghanistan's getting very, very bad." And so I kind of went through the experience of becoming a father at the same time that Afghanistan was collapsing. And I would spend my nights up until 3 or 4 in the morning taking in groups of all of the information that I could get from them, of their family members, their passports, their Tuskegee, like all of their data, and trying to send that over. And we had some connections in Congressman Connor Lamb's office who helped us send those names up to the State Department and try to get some of these people out. And I worked with a great group of veterans who poured their heart and soul into trying to save these people as that country collapsed. And we were able to get some of them onto the airfield into safety, but unfortunately, we left a lot of people behind.
Yeah.
And that to me was this moment of, it felt like this massive failure, this massive moment in my life where I felt like I had failed. I had failed in this deep, deep way that I wasn't able to get these people to safety. What more could I have done to help these people? What could I have done to try to make Afghanistan stand ready against the Taliban? And those regrets were just eating at me. And I ended up having a conversation with my wife's cousin, and she is a wonderful, wonderful human being who utilizes and works with plant medicine and people in leading them and guiding them through this journey. And with a wonderful group out in California that they've been doing this for years.
Yeah.
They've been doing this and they've been healing and helping people. And it was kind of in that moment where I said, like, I am so deeply wounded from what happened in Afghanistan. And I don't think that another 6 years of talk therapy is going to get me to the point where I feel okay with this.
Right.
So I was seeking out that next step in my healing journey. And so for me, it was, I guess my decision hour would be like the fall of Afghanistan, of saying like, this is not all right. I'm not okay. And I need to do something because I need to be the best father possible for my daughter. I need to be the best husband possible for my wife. And I need to be the best possible version of myself.
Yeah.
Because I deserve it.
Yeah. And that's, it's hard to believe it's been a year already.
Yeah.
One. Two, I just read a book that talked a little bit about that from a bunch of military guys. It was Tim Kennedy's book in the group that he went over with, and how certain things didn't transpire according to plan, and a lot of people were left back, and how that made some people feel and whatnot. And then hearing it from you right now is kind of like, I wasn't an Afghan guy. I was an Iraq guy in 2003. And yeah, can't even fathom that thought. And it's kind of like, we've been there for so long. I can't help but to feel what you guys are feeling, in a sense of, damn, you want to help out, and you're literally tens of thousands of miles away, and you're trying to figure out what you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talk to your wife's cousin?
Yeah.
She kind of educates you on this process a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a couple calls, and I met with Attila and Alex, the people at the Healing Center there in California, and I met with them, and we talked about some of my experiences. And we talked about.
Can you say where in California?
Yeah, it's Santa Cruz.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, they have. It's a quite a remarkable thing being there in the Monterey Bay. Your day after is it's a very, you're still kind of in that, you're blown away by the profundity of the moment.
Yeah.
But being there in Monterey Bay was, it's a beautiful place to be, to take in all of the healing that's available. And so we have a couple conversations. I kind of make the decision that, like, no, I'm very interested in this. I've heard enough from the scientific side. I've looked at the data. I've heard enough. I've seen Rick Doblin go on Joe Rogan and talk about it. And I said, like, okay, this is for me. Now, that they were doing it in a very medicalized, they do it in a hospital, in a medical setting, and
right.
You're there with a psychologist, and you're laying down on like a doctor's bed, and that's how they did it. I wouldn't say I have an aversion to the medical community, but I have a bit of a bone to pick, because a lot of times when you go to the VA about things, they'll offer you just about anything that you could wrap your mind around, from getting out of the Army. I had a back injury, like a lot of us infantrymen do, and basically got offered a lifetime prescription of OxyContin.
Yeah.
That
nothing,
to me was,
nothing. And that's, oh my God, you brought up the VA. I have to. They do stuff where it's like, here, this will shut you. It's basically, this will shut you up. That's the attitude I've taken for it. I've had issues with injuries and stuff that I've had to fight for the last, since 2012 on appeals and stuff. And it's like, this didn't happen any other time. I was fine prior to this, and this happened at this time, and it's documented, and you still said no. Like, how, it's just, and then here, take this. No, I'm not going to take that, because I know what the cause and effects is. Like, you eventually, and with the side effects of it may cause suicidal thoughts. Well, what the fuck are you giving it for me for then?
Yeah. And I think some people don't realize the kind of the craziness inside of the VA sometimes, where, like, let's talk about me. My right ankle is a service-connected disability from being in the infantry and rolling my ankle more times than I can count, wearing 100 pounds of armor and equipment, wearing a rucksack, doing all that. Right ankle, service-connected. Left ankle, not service-connected. So both, I got it looked at, by the VA orthopedics, and the guy says, oh yeah, left ankle, 3 torn ligaments. They had to do surgery to basically put my ankle back together. And he says, oh, you have the exact same damage in your right ankle. So whenever you want to get that surgery done, we'll do that one as well. But they didn't service connect my left ankle. They service connected my right ankle. Exact same damage in both. But so my question would always be to anyone at the VA, like, did I hop around on one leg for 6 years? Like, let's think about it rationally. But that is one of the things that I've seen in the VA. And I don't like to beat up on the VA because I think a lot of times they are overworked. They have too many patients and not enough clinicians.
I don't think you're looking at the people that work at the VA. I think it's the higher ups that run the VA. Let's be clear on that. There's a lot of great people that work at the VA, and Adam and I are not downplaying the VA or the people. We're not talking bad about the people that work for the VA. It's the bureaucratic BS that's involved with it is what we're complaining about. So I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah. And it becomes systematized.
Yeah.
And you and a lot of guys say this, and I felt the exact same ways. I felt like a number. I felt like I was patient number 6 today, and patient number 6 meets this, and this, so he qualifies for that. And here's a drug. Here's this.
Yeah.
And it was, like I said, it was a lifetime prescription of OxyContin for a back injury that I said, like, actually, I think I'm going to try, yoga.
Yeah. Do something. Yeah. Let me do it myself.
Let me try some other things before I take legal heroin for the rest.
And God forbid that they help you with the chiropractic. And now they do, but it's like one visit a month or something stupid. And it's like, I need to go like twice a week,
Yeah.
So
I went to a great guy here in Pittsburgh who once a week, and he worked out a lot of scar tissue and damage in my lower back.
But see, that's the thing, Adam. The problem with that is now you're talking about kind of like the Western medicine, type stuff like yoga and chiropractic care and stuff like that. Stuff that they can't make money on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it again, folks. That's the reason being. So you go have this experience.
Yeah, so I've had 3 MDMA experiences.
Okay. Now, how long does it last?
The MDMA experience lasts about 4 hours.
So is this this isn't an outpatient thing, or is it?
Yeah. So I go to
Is it really? So you go
to that place in Santa Cruz. And like I said, that the way that Rick Doblin and they did the study that got the FDA to admit this is breakthrough therapy is very medicalized. This was more of a ceremony. This is a healing ceremony. So there's relaxing music playing, and and you're laying there on a bed, and you the big thing with psychedelics is what is your set and setting, right? Where are you at, and what are your intentions, right? And so setting an intention prior to the psychedelic journey is like really the most important thing, because it's something to ground yourself and it's something to return yourself to. And so my first MDMA experience was on February 15th of this year. And it was one of the most profound moments in my life. I had gone there with the idea of like, I'm going to set my intention on this and that and seeking this and looking for that. And it was like, no, when I got there, what felt right was to set my intention on accepting a healing path, accepting a healing journey.
Okay.
And so I took the MDMA and then put a blindfold on, lay down on a bed, and the guy I was working with, Attila, it's like I think that can call him my guide, in this. And and so the MDMA experience starts with I think like a lot of people, they go like, when is it going to kick in? And here's the thing for anybody who eventually goes and does an MDMA experience, when you start having the thought of, did I get a dud? When is this going to kick in? Hold on.
Yeah.
Because it's about to start. It's like, and so for me, every time it's like, oh, when is it going to start? And then you go like, oh.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like I was like rubbing my chest and being like, oh, it's so furry. Right? Like, it's pretty funny. And I was like, oh. And then I just said to Attila, I said, oh, it's starting. And he just kind of laughed and he said, yes, it is, brother. Yes, it is. And so like as the experience started to build up, I could not so much see because I'm wearing a blindfold, but feel. I was building balls of love and of light with my hands and then pulling them into my heart and then building a ball of love, breathing it into my soul. And then the experience starts to come. And as the MDMA starts to really take effect, you feel it through your whole body, and then you start to have the kind of the mental imaging that starts to come. And so I started to see moments of my experience in Iraq was the first thing. It was an experience I had in Iraq where I was the rear gunner on a truck, and we were doing a mounted, dismounted patrol. So we had our dismounts out in front of the convoy, and we had 4 MRAPs, the old Cayman MAT MRAPs. Yes, we had those, and I was the rear gunner, and my driver, Noah Price, as we're rolling down this street called Northbridge. If anybody's ever been to the beautiful city of Hawija, Iraq, you will know what Northbridge is, and that is where we got into the majority of our contacts, was on this street called Northbridge. So we're going down Northbridge, and Noah starts telling me, like, hey, man, watch that kid. This kid's been following us for a couple of blocks. Fucking, like, what is he doing? So I kind of get my eyes on him, and I'm watching him and keep my eyes. And now it was, you're the rear gunner. That was generally the guy who was going to get hit by something. So you're scanning. In those, in a city like Iraq, I think, people think like you see the turret and you see the turret armor and everything. Well, like, that's great, but the truth is Adam, I was having to stand up out of my turret, standing on the gunner's seat so you can look over the side of the truck and see everything. And so the convoy and our patrol gets halted, and this kid walks up to the right side of the vehicle, and I can see him. It looks like he has like a Gatorade bottle in his pocket. Right. And I see him playing with it, and he pulls it out, and it's a Russian 60 millimeter mortar round that had the fuses taken out, and they put a Russian grenade fuse in. And that was kind of typical for what we were being hit with a lot. Was like improvised hand grenades created out of mortar rounds and things like that. And so I drew down on this kid, and he had no idea that I already had the drop on. Yeah. And so I start screaming into my mic, Noah, get the guys back here. Like, I'm going to fucking have to kill this kid. I'm going to shoot this kid. And, I take my rifle off safe. I'm starting to take the slack out of my trigger, and I have my EOTech right on this kid's face. And in that moment, I made the decision to kill this kid. I'm going to kill a 9-year-old boy. The moment that grenade comes out of his pocket, he's dead. And in that moment, he looked up at me. He looked down the street and saw all of our dismounts running at him. And he turned and he beat feet and took off running. And in that moment of him taking off running, the adrenaline dump hit me. And I like almost collapsed down into my turret. That is a moment of like, not only of relief, but of like, oh my God, what did I just like accept into my life? Yeah. And like, it starts to really hit me when I get back to the outpost of like, oh, you decided to kill a 9-year-old kid. Yeah. You're a monster. And so that was this thing that I had carried with me for years of like, I'm a monster. I made a decision to kill a kid. Who does that? Who would make that decision? Through a lot of talk therapy, and you get around to you put some context around it, and like, the true monster in that situation isn't me. It's not that kid. It's the son of a bitch who gave a 9-year-old a hand grenade and told him to go throw it at the Americans.
Right.
Because he didn't care if it killed me. What he wanted me to do was kill that kid. So because the whole city was fucking erupted over a 9-year-old being shot dead by the Americans. Yeah. And that's what they wanted to do. And so I'm seeing this experience again in my MDMA journey. I'm seeing the whole thing.
So you're reliving it.
Reliving it. Now, I think a good thing to add into this is it's not so scary the second time because you've already been there.
Right.
You know that, like, okay, I am just...
You know what happens.
You know what happens. I'm experiencing this again. That's okay. I'm here. And I would be... I think the way that I described it best was, it was like I was watching a movie. Of all of these I was watching the movie of this happen. And I could press pause on the movie if I open my eyes behind the blindfold and put my hand on the ground. I would kind of, oh, that's right, ground myself. That's right, I'm in Santa Cruz, California. Okay. But when I took my hand off and I closed my eyes again,
it took you back.
I couldn't fast forward. I just had to watch it. And it was like, you have to watch this because here comes the lesson, right? As that kid takes off running, I get hit with a wave of, the only thing that I can describe it as is the love that I will feel when I meet Jesus Christ at the end of my life. A wave of love and of acceptance that started at my head, flowed down to my heart, and then exploded out through all of my limbs. Love and acceptance. Love and acceptance. Love and acceptance. And it just washes over you. Waves of love and of acceptance. And then the next experience starts. Yeah. The next thing starts.
And this goes on for about 4 hours.
Yeah, for about 4 hours it goes on. And after each experience, you could press pause, but you can't fast forward.
Right.
You have to hit play and you have to watch it.
You have to go through it.
You have to see it. You have to go through it. And so as all of these things, I start seeing these experiences from Iraq and Afghanistan, and that for me was like each one, I'd see, learn the lesson, and then get hit with a wave of love and of acceptance.
Right.
And then kind of at the end of the MDMA experience, it starts to be less, for me at least, it started to be less of a reliving of things, and it kind of moved from an experience of something that I had seen in Afghanistan where we had ambushed a Taliban patrol, and my mortar was firing illumination rounds over this ambush. And so we kind of watched a Taliban patrol get wiped out by an ANA platoon. And so I was seeing that kind of in the same way. But then it became more of like a psychedelic thing of I saw the ANA turn into lions. And I saw these lions going after the Taliban. And it was like, oh, well, I didn't see that. I didn't see that. I saw a Taliban patrol get wiped out in Afghanistan, but I didn't see that. And so that's where it became kind of like a little bit more of the, what people would think about like a psychedelic.
Yeah.
Right? And then at the end of it, you start to get a little bit more into the creation of the things that are coming in your mind. And that's where it starts to return me back to that intention I said at the beginning of this, of accepting a healing journey. And so at the end of this MDMA experience, I saw myself walking, right?
Okay.
And this is a thing about the psychedelic experience that until you have one, it's hard to
explain where people can visualize it.
Yeah, and so the best way to do it is a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
Right? And so you see pictures in your mind, or you see something in your mind, and you just kind of intuitively know the entirety of the story. And so I saw myself walking down a pathway. Now, the Robert Frost poem about two roads diverged in a wood, I chose one way. Yeah. Now, that for me is a very meaningful poem because I kind of took the road less traveled in my town. I grew up in a wonderful, upper middle class suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where my high school prided themselves on the statistics of 99% of our kids go on to college. And I was part of that 99% until I was like, we're in the middle of a war and I'm dropping out of college and a lot like Chris Taylor in Platoon.
Yeah.
Wasn't learning anything.
Right.
I dropped out. I joined the Army, joined the infantry, asked for combat. I couldn't ask for Vietnam, but it was Iraq or Afghanistan.
That's a great reference.
That to me was like and I had buddies of mine in the Army, a good friend of mine, Clark Becker, who said to me, like, we would watch Platoon every night. He would always say, like, you giving up college?
Yeah.
Well, I gave it up to be here with you, brother. I gave it up to be here with you, Clark. And so for me, I got this picture of myself walking down a path. And it was like very clear to me that I had been on a war path for a dozen years. And it struck me like, it's been about a dozen years since you joined the Army.
Yeah.
You've been on the war path for a dozen years. And then I reached a branch in the path. And I could look down the path. And I could see the path ahead of me. And what I saw was old veterans. I saw veterans of the First World War and the Second World War, and Korea, and Vietnam, and Desert Storm, and the current conflicts, Iraq and Afghanistan. But they were all old men. They were old men, but they were wearing their combat uniforms.
Okay.
Like you've seen the videos and the photos of those, like the old paratroopers in their 80s and 90s. Yeah. They get them a nice press, and it was like that, but they were wearing their combat equipment.
Okay.
And they were playing war. They were playing war like a child would play war.
Okay.
And it to me was this thing of like, these guys are still on the war path. They've been on the war path their entire life. They never came back. And they're still trying to relive this experience. And then I looked down the other path, and it was a path of healing. And I made the decision that I'm going to go down the healing path. I'm going to take a healing path. I'm going to give up the war path. I'm going to give up this path of, I'm no longer going to try to pretend that I'm still a soldier.
Right.
Still trying to be at war.
You made that decision. Yeah.
I'm going to take a healing path. And that to me was like, and in that, the thing that I heard, kind of like in your mind is, you are a warrior on a healing journey now. You are a warrior on a healing journey now. And then waves of love and of acceptance, of accepting a healing journey in my life. And that was the first MDMA experience for me. And I think it'd be good to talk about all three of them, because they were all very different. And that's something for a lot of people, is the MDMA experience isn't one thing. It can be very different.
And it's not the same, my understanding, because I got a friend of mine that literally just went through this as we speak. Mm-hmm. He's coming back. He was down in out in California, and then they went down to Mexico, just on the other side there to do it. And he's coming back right now, actually. He just texts us like, hey, I'm on my way back. I'll call you later this afternoon. And I'm eager to hear his experience and what with it, because it's one, it's different for everybody. And if you've done it multiple times, like Adam has done, he just said, it's different each time as well. It's not right. And I've heard that from other people as well. Adam, I want to make sure we cover this, because we're coming up on time here a little bit. This experience for you kind of prompted something that you're kind of putting together. You're putting together this project that we've talked offline before. It's an adventure retreat that you're looking to do here coming up in 2023.
Yep.
Share with us more about what is it? Yeah.
So in those MDMA experiences, kind of in my second one and in my third one, I saw what it is that I really want to be doing. And I saw that I want to be working with veterans, and I want to be helping veterans remember what it's like to be adventurous and to live and to be excited about what they're doing and to get out of their comfort zone. And all of our growth is found in moments of, getting uncomfortable, getting out of your comfort zone and getting out and doing things that are outside of your daily, outside of your normal. So I'm putting together a retreat to Zion National Park in March, where we'll be working with a guide service out there to set up some rock climbing, some canyoneering, taking e-bikes all around the park, like a visit up to Angel's Landing. And all of that focused around, like, what is the experience and what changes can you make in your life from a profound experience? It doesn't just have to be psychedelics. Profound experiences in nature can change our perspectives. Profound experiences in our life change the way that we see the world. We were talking about this before we recorded. They said, like, becoming a father is a very profound experience. It changes your perspective. It changes how you see the world. Combat changes the way that you see the world. Psychedelics change the way you see the world. Profound experiences in nature. Going out to our beautiful national parks and having these profound experiences where it changes the way that you see the world. And that for me was, I went on an adventure retreat, kind of similar to what we were building in the Grand Canyon. And I loved it, and I thought it was great being out, and you get a little bit of you see the scale of the Grand Canyon, and you go like, my problems are fucking silly to be worried about that. Like, look at the grandiosity of this. Look how beautiful this is. And one of the things that I saw in that experience was a missed opportunity. It was a missed opportunity to go into this with an intention, like to set my intention on, I'm going to do this because I want to make a significant change in my life. And that's kind of how I went into it. And I think it's something that I've heard from a lot of people, is there's a bit of PTSD tourism that goes on in our community. People who they have all of these issues and they have all of these things, and they don't desire healing. They desire just a trip, a this, a that, a thing. They're not working towards healing. They're not working towards making the substantial changes in their life that are actually going to move them forward. And so that's what this adventure retreat's about, is how do we go into a profound experience like this where we know already we're going to get outside of our comfort zone. We're going to do some things we haven't been doing. They say, I haven't gone rock climbing in years. Yeah. I haven't done any rappelling since, like, I don't know, Fort Bliss, doing some stuff at the air assault school, like learning how to rappel down a tower, And so things like that of like, hey, let's get out of our comfort zone, and then let's focus our minds on, okay, wow, how has this experience changed my perspective?
Right.
How can I use experiences like this to move myself forward, to take on a new challenge? To say, like, hey, I am desiring something different in my life, and I would like to move forward with that. Or how do you overcome a challenge in your life? And I think the big part that we're looking to build is a collection of veterans together going through an experience like this, because we all have things that we can share with each other. And that's one of the things that we talked about with you, Adam, is I have a lot of veteran friends who want to start businesses. They want to get out there, or they want to do their own thing. They're tired of working for somebody else. They want to do their own thing, but they don't know how. They don't know how to get started because they don't know anybody who's done it before. They don't know somebody who started this. Or maybe it's that they want to move toward a healing direction in their life. Well, I don't know anybody who's done that. How do I do that? Well, let's get together and let's talk about that. Yep. Because the chances are, when you start opening up and you start being vulnerable and talking about the things that are bothering you, the issues that you're having, I guarantee it, somebody out there, another veteran, has gone through the same thing or has gone through a similar experience, and they can help you.
And a lot of the time, I'm going to go one further and say a lot of those, like, I've always had a problem asking for help. And I'm not afraid to admit it. I've said it before. I'll say it right now. Like, pride has gotten in my way a lot of times. But then I start thinking, somebody once told me, they're like, what if there's a veteran or somebody out there whose purpose in life is to help others, and you're denying them their purpose by not letting them help you?
Yeah.
Like, mind blown. I felt horrible because I was like, who the hell am I to deny somebody else? Like, they're just being friendly and want to help.
Yeah.
And they have good intentions.
Yeah.
In doing that. And here, I'm not letting them do that because I was being selfish.
Yeah. People want to help. Veterans want to help each other. We know intimately what it's like to suffer together, to help build somebody up.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things, like, I just had, it's these beautiful moments being a veteran that, like, some of my guys that worked for me in Afghanistan in my mortar platoon, you know, they're still in and they're doing excellent. And one of my guys, Sean Todd, just made Sergeant First Class. You know, and this is a kid who was a specialist, right?
Yeah.
He was a specialist when we were in Afghanistan, and now he's a fucking Sergeant First Class. Just made the list, you know? And he sent me a message, like, right after he said, "Hey man, I made Sergeant First Class." I sent a message like, "Brother, I'm so fucking proud of you.
That's cool, man.
Congratulations."
Yeah.
And it's that thing of like, hey, take pride when your friends do well.
Yep.
Man, raise them up, support them, congratulate them, be proud of them, be happy for them, because that's what people need.
Yep.
Not only does raising somebody else, sure, man, everybody likes to get accolades and have somebody tell them, like, doing great, I'm proud of you, but it also is for yourself.
Yep.
Where you can say, like, no, I'm the type of guy that I don't tear people down.
Nope.
I lift people up.
We'll celebrate.
You know? Yeah. And I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, and he had this guy Josh Dubin on. And Josh Dubin works with the Innocence Project and getting wrongfully convicted individuals out of jail. And he had on this, like, remarkable man who did 20-some years in prison for 2 murders he did not commit, and finally got himself out. And this guy is like he's like one of the most prolific jailhouse lawyers in America. This guy basically, like, works to get wrongfully convicted people out of jail. And Josh Dubin said something on the program that, like, when I heard it, I had to play it back a couple times because it was like, oh, that's profound. And he said, "When I find myself in moments of questioning, I ask myself, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when?" Right? And that was like, yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
If not me, then who? And for me, it is this thing of, like, I saw in my MDMA journeys a pathway forward where I can help lead other veterans.
Would you go as far as to say it's your purpose?
Absolutely. I mean, the clarity that comes inside of an MDMA experience is, and it's partially because of the effects that MDMA has on the brain. It physically shuts down the fear centers of the amygdala. So you cannot process fear. You don't feel fear while you're under MDMA, like on the MDMA experience. And for a couple days after, you're not afraid. You're not afraid to be open and to share with people. It was one of those moments of, like, I walked into a bar to grab a bite to eat in this little town in SoCal, California, and struck up a conversation with the bartender, and turns out he was 101st in the same place that I was in Afghanistan a year prior. And we started talking, we started opening up to each other about our experience and the difficulties that we've had. And it was like, holy shit, man, just by opening up and talking about and being vulnerable about my own experiences, I was able to meet a new friend.
Yeah.
To share something with him, to say, like, hey, man, we're all going through it together.
Right.
You know? And that to me is like this thing of, like, when we decide that we can open up and we decide that we can be vulnerable and we can share. If not me, then who?
Right.
I had the wonderful opportunity to do this, so I have to share openly about it. And I have to say, like, man, I saw my purpose in that MDMA journey of building these adventure retreats, of building these retreats to help connect other veterans to each other, because we work so much better. We solve our own problems when we work together as a team. And also I saw that, like you said, the purpose.
Yeah.
I saw the strength of the purpose in the same way that I felt when I was a sergeant in the Army, of, like, this is what I am meant to do. And it was to help bring plant medicine to more veterans, to help bring things like psilocybin, MDMA journeys, ayahuasca journeys to veterans, because I have found immense healing
And more and more people are doing these therapies and stuff. Adam, what for the listeners that are listening to this, how can they reach out to you? How do they make contact with you?
They can shoot me an email, adamzaffuto@gmail.com.
Okay.
They can find me on Facebook. We also have reengagepgh.com. You can go there and find us there, and we'll be putting up more information about the Zion trip. And we're looking for right around the end of March to be doing that. And we have 10 spots open. Hopefully, you'll be taking one of them. Yeah.
I'm planning on it. Loving it.
Yeah, but it is this thing of we can all really move forward together. We can help. And the true essence of this is the healing. And that's something that you see in these MDMA and psychedelic journeys is the healing. All the healing you need is inside of you.
Right. It's
how do you unlock that? And I listen, psychedelics aren't going to be for everybody.
Right.
But here's a question that I have for everybody. Is profound experience something that you're interested in? Is getting out of your comfort zone and experiencing something different that excites you, that connects you back to an adventurous type of living, that it might be the thing that says, you know what? I am going to quit my job and I am going to go do that thing that I've always wanted to do, because if not me, then who? Yeah. If not now, then when? Yeah. Then when? When am I going to do this? When am I going to actually start living? Because for me, I saw the path. I saw the path that I could go down, that I could be an old man wearing my combat gear, playing war, still on the war path. Or I can go down and I can take this healing journey, this beautiful, beautiful healing journey, where I can help lead other veterans. Yeah. And other veterans are going to help lead others,
me. And in doing so, it creates that snowball effect where more and more people are getting help. And ultimately, I'll even say this, I'll argue and say that you're making the world and society a more positive and a better place in doing so.
Trying to.
And
if we can all, an old maxim from the first sergeants of the world, like, you should always be improving your position.
Yep.
You should there's always a little bit more that we can do. We can hang that concertina wire a little better. We can dig that bunker a little bit deeper. We can fix those trench lines and make them a little more that first sergeants love that type of shit, Yeah. Well, how do you be a first sergeant in your own life? And how do you be a first sergeant in this world where you say to the world, like, oh, I'm going to improve my position every single day. Yeah. And improving our position in this world is like, hey, how do we help lift our brothers up? How do we help make this world a better place? And for me, I think helping veterans to see a different pathway forward, where it's not just having to take an SSRI every day for the rest of their life, Zoloft or Prozac or whatever they're putting people on.
Right.
The second most prescribed medication in America is an antipsychotic that is used to boost SSRI. That, I think, to me is a remarkably crazy thing. And that speaks to our society, not just to veterans, but how we are treating the symptoms instead of treating the issue. And something like MDMA, 3 sessions.
Yeah.
And there is a marked statistical deterioration of PTSD symptoms. And for 2/3 of the people, they no longer have PTSD. And that's something
those numbers are phenomenal, folks.
You do not see that with SSRIs. You do not see that with any other type of treatment.
And you're not going to see this on mainstream media. You're not going to see this, coming out of the CDC or anything like that, because there's a lot of you're certainly not going to see it from Big Pharma.
Yeah, 3 treatments, and this is something that I've heard, there's no money in healing people, Adam.
Yeah, that's the problem. There's no
money in healing.
You end up working yourself out of a job. But this is one of those things where, like, I would be honored to do that.
Yeah.
Adam, listen, we're up on time.
All right,
appreciate you taking, folks. If you're listening, we're gonna have Adam's contact information and where you can find him on social media, the websites and stuff in the show notes below. But before we let you go, don't forget, check out all the great shows over at Heroes Media Group. Go to heroesmediagroup.com. Until next time, you've been listening to The Decision Hour.